This video will show you a couple of things. First, how to download the Mineral Resources Data System, that's the MRDS, to your Google Earth program. Then I'll show you some examples of old mines that I have found that are not in the MRDS. And thirdly, I'll talk about some tips on how to use Google Earth to find obscure sites to explore. The term lost gold mine needs some clarification. The mines I'm going to show you are not completely lost. After all, I found them, and a select few people are probably also aware of them. What I mean by lost is that the mines are not in any of the mine databases. A mine that is not in the database is desirable to explore and hunt for gold because it's probably not been picked over by many other gold and artifact hunters. In this photo, Cody and I are on a trail that will take us to the Dutchess Mine. This is an old gold mine that's at the foot of Table Mountain along the Stanislaus River. Now, we aren't going there to look for gold, it's just a nice hike. Its location is in the MRDS, so it is well known, and thus not the type of mine that this video is really about. Personally, I just like to explore old mine sites. Maybe go inside just a little way if the mine looks relatively safe. Sometimes use a metal detector, pick up a few interesting rocks, and if a stream is nearby, pan some of the tailings or do some panning in the stream itself. Here is a Google Earth image of the Dutchess Mine. If you're looking for gold, the best place to look, without actually going in the mine itself, is the tailings pile. The waste rock resulting from removing the overburden and getting down to where the gold was is probably not as likely to contain any gold. If you're into relic hunting, old mines can be a good place to pick up some treasures, or, as my wife likes to call them, my rust collection, or sometimes just plain junk. Okay, the first thing you need to do is download the MRDS so you'll know where all the mines are that have been located. And this particular address here is where you go, and all the directions on how to do it are at that site. This is an example of what your Google Earth map will look like on your screen once you've downloaded the maps or the locations into your system. Now let's take a look at a Google Earth image of a site that wasn't identified in the MRDS, but it did look like a possible mine. After I saw this site, I traveled by car, then boat, and then hiked to this spot to see what was actually there. I got the exact GPS coordinates from Google Earth, and then I used my handheld GPS device to find this location, and you can see that there was a cut in the bank of this hill just like it showed up in Google Earth, and here's the portal to the mine. And so this is what it looks like inside. It doesn't look too safe going in there. As you can see, there's no supports, and it looks like it's a pretty old mine, and it looks like it was a pretty rough excavation in there. Must have been very difficult. I would imagine they used some relatively primitive tools, some primitive techniques, and it must have been, this is in a remote area, so I would think it was very difficult carving out the rock from here. I sure hope that they found some gold after all that effort. Okay, now let's turn to Google Earth, and I'll go over some ideas and some tips that might help you find some interesting things out there to explore. Like, check out this image from 2017, and look at the arrow, and there's something there, but it's a little difficult to tell what it is due to the shadows involved. Now here's an image in 2013, and it's a little bit more clear as to what this might be. Also notice that there are some mounds there that very likely could be the result of tailings from a mine. Well, here's a close-up of that image, and see how it forms a right angle. And when you have a right angle like that, that's not something that typically occurs in nature. And this, in fact, is what I found when I went out there. It was some sort of a structure, some sort of a stone enclosure. Okay, take a look at this image now, and where the arrow is pointing, and you can see that it's a relatively straight line. So this is a little bit unusual in nature. And here's a close-up, and you can see that shadow there indicating that there's something there that's pretty straight. And so you want to get a closer look at it. And in Google Earth, you can rotate the image, of course. And when you rotate it, it looks like this, and it's even more obvious that it's a structure. But look at this image, taken in 2017, and you can't even see it anymore. The important point here to remember is that just because you don't see something on Google Earth doesn't mean it's not there. And in fact, this is the wall that I found when I went out to the site. This is another image of that same wall. So obviously it's still there, but sometimes you just can't see it in the Google image. Here's some other things that we found at the site. These rocks that were piled up here are tailings from some sort of a mining operation, and you might be able to see some quartz in those piles. And in fact, here's a close-up of a bunch of the quartz rocks that I collected at the site. This next tip has to do with water levels. Sometimes these sites can only be reached by boat. And you can see that this is a 2016 image, and notice how it's different from 2011. You have a much higher water level because this creek here is controlled by a reservoir. So in order to get to this site by boat, you have to know what the water level is at a particular time. This is the internet site that you can go to, at least in California, that you can use to calculate the water levels in a particular reservoir on a particular date. You can then compare that to Google Earth images. So if you wanted to go to this particular place, you'd see that the water levels in July of 2011 were high enough so that you could reach this spot. So you just have to find out what those water levels were back in July of 2011, and then you can see what they are on a given date currently. So this allows you to time your visit to the area to those times that the current water levels in the reservoir match the water levels in the Google Earth image that shows that you can get access to the spot. Here's another Google Earth image. And these piles right here, what look like piles, look like tailings to me. But you never really know until you go out there. So this is what I found when I did. Well, Phil, Cody, and I are along the North Fork of the Calaveras River, and you can see in the foreground right here this big pile of rocks. And there's some rocks over there too, and just about everywhere around here actually. There's the Calaveras there, the North Fork. Let me just pan around, and as we come over here, let me zero in a little bit on the opposite side of the river. Through the trees, perhaps you can see a great big pile of rocks there. Over here, there's all kinds of dredging for gold along the Calaveras, and it's quite in evidence. Anyhow, what we're doing here, this is a rather remote section of the Calaveras. We're going to go down here for another half mile or so and look along the river, see if we can find anything interesting besides all these old mine workings. Alright, we're coming up on a nice bedrock area. Looks fairly flat, pretty close to the river. So this would be a good place to check out for the bedrock mortars. Yeah, looks like a real good spot. But just because the rock is ideal doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be any mortars there. Let's look around. Ah, look at this right here. Okay, let's zero in. Let me clean that out. That could be a mortar right there. And there could be a couple of others over there. So we're going to stop here a little bit and take a closer look at these. Here's another tip about using Google Earth images. Notice this was taken in July of 2011, and it was a very wet year, and you can see the drainage from the mine. But take a look at this image that was taken in October of 2016, which was a very dry year, and you don't see that drainage at all, which is very important in some situations if you're looking for springs, or in this case, drainage from a mine.